Hi, I'm Jay Editon.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, the outs, and the retcons of comics' greatest superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Jay and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week we are continuing the launch of Resurrect Scion with the books of April 5th, 2017. Let's go.
Let's start with the big one, X-Men Gold, #1, written by Mark Guggenheim, with pencils by Ardian Syaf, inks by Jay Leiston, and colors by Frank Martin. So yeah, this is the first issue of one of the two flagship books of Resurrection. Resurrect Scion. We got
it straight from the source.
And this is the one that is more the 70s team. It's more a modern incarnation of the Giant Size X-Men #1 team, or at least the team that was hanging out shortly thereafter in the John Byrne-esque era. We have a couple differences. Of course, we have Old Man Logan from the alternate future instead of Logan, since Logan's dead, and we have Rachel Gray as Prestige instead of Jean.
And of course, we've got Shadowcat, Kitty Pryde as team leader.
Yeah, now Kitty's leading the team, and honestly, that's a big part of what this issue seems to be focusing on. So I read this issue twice. I read it once before today, and then once again today. And I actually liked it a lot better the second time. The first time it just seemed sort of, for lack of a better word, bland, like it didn't really have anything to say. And while I do think some of those criticisms remain for me, on the second time, I don't know, I caught a lot more of the subtleties, and I caught more of what it seems to be trying to do, which is to set up a new status quo, yes, but also to bring us back to a number of old status quo points from the past.
I mentioned this in context of X-Men Prime, but it feels like Guggenheim and company are working very, very, very hard to evoke Astonishing X-Men #1.
They really, really seem to be. I mean, there's one panel toward the end where the team is heading into the hangar to get onto the Blackbird. The Blackbird.
Yeah, it's very Hero Walk.
Yeah, well, it's very specifically the Hero Walk from Astonishing X-Men #1, that really famous panel.
Even diagonal.
It's just, like from the back instead of from the front. And, on the one hand, yes, it's derivative, and it's like how Barbed Wire, the movie, apes Casablanca. Like, you probably shouldn't do that unless you can live up to it. But at the same time...
You're not going to mention Overdrawn at the Memory Bank?
And Overdrawn at the Memory Bank. Well, that's just, has Casablanca sort of in it. It also has Raul Julia, so that's some points there.
There's a lot going on in that
There's
movie.
A lot going on in that movie. But anyway...
Not good.
No. But at the same time, just like Astonishing X-Men was very necessary to bring some light back to the X-Men after Grant Morrison's run, I think this is a really necessary move after the Extraordinary era, just because that was so unrelentingly dark and also directionless.
I am not the first person to point this out, nor will I be the last, but I think the place where this book founders most profoundly is on the diversity front.
In terms of the cast,
yeah. We have a cast that is basically all white, save for Storm, or a lead cast. We get a few small cameos from students otherwise, and that's a problem. And really, honestly, there is no good excuse for that in 2017.
Right. I mean, I get that Guggenheim's going for the 70s X-Men again,
but evoking the past should not mean repeating the mistakes and prejudices of the past, one. And two, there are so many other avenues he could have drawn from.
Yeah.
And this has come up in interviews, and I have yet to be satisfied with one of his answers. So I am. This book is starting out with one strike pretty heavily for me already.
That's reasonable. That said, I mean, the characters we do have here, they're certainly core classic X-Men characters, and they have a great history of interacting well and being written generally well.
What did you think of the art?
So the art by Ardian Syaf, I'm trying to wrap my brain around what I think about it. I mean, a lot of it I like. I like the costume designs by and large pretty well. Although I gotta say, I do miss Nightcrawler and Colossus's extraordinary looks. I thought those were great designs. They're much more traditional in this.
Yeah, the absence of Colossus's cop stash is inexcusable.
Right, and Nightcrawler's kick-ass chainmail. That was great.
I do, however, really appreciate that Kitty Pryde is once again officially sporting the coming to terms with my sexuality haircut.
You mentioned that's what it was.
Yeah, that is distinctly what it is. That is
okay.
Yes,
okay.
That is the actual name of that haircut. If you go into a place and you tell them that is what you want, that is the haircut you will get.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if I'm ever looking for a change and to come to terms with my
you'd
sexuality,
actually rock the haircut pretty thoroughly. That's not the only name for it, but
okay.
Considering that it's Kitty and the lengths she presumably went to pull Rachel out of retirement onto the team, I'd like to think
That would help on the diversity front to a degree.
But no, it would help on
axis.
one vector of diversity. Yeah. It doesn't do anything about the fact that we've got an overwhelmingly white team.
Agreed.
And this is something I feel strongly about. Diversity isn't a catch-all. They aren't interchangeable. You can't say we have diversity, we have a gay team member. That's not an excuse for not having racial diversity. It's not an excuse for not having gender diversity. It's not it's not an excuse for dropping those other balls. You can't it's not a one-hit concept.
Mm-hmm. That's legit, yeah. You're asking about the art.
Yes.
So overall, I like Seoff. His style isn't terribly distinctive. Like
No.
it's good visual storytelling. Like it's very clear what's going on. Everything's easy to follow. There's some pretty good facial expressions, but a lot of the less vocal characters for me seemed kind of generic, like kind of hard to tell apart. Like there's a baseball game at one point, because of course there is, and I couldn't actually tell who some of the players were. Like I think the gray guy was Gray Malkin. Maybe is he still alive? I don't even know if he's still alive.
I also categorically reject the concept of choir playing baseball without ruining it.
That's true, yeah.
This is not this. I feel like someone made some pretty critical errors in characterization.
Talking of characterization, so Guggenheim's writing in the past has often seemed a little like the characters have seemed a little flat to me.
Yeah,
so,
they've seemed like they've in his arc on X-Men adjectiveless. Mm-hmm. The characters largely felt like they were there to fill slots in a story. Mm-hmm. And that's not so much the case here with at least a handful of them. I think his Kitty is very well written. I would actually have appreciated more narration from her.
Even a more direct perspective?
I feel like if there's ever a point where that kind of caption narration is worth it and is effective, it's when you're reestablishing the X-Men status quo via Kitty Pryde. Like that is, if you're going to make a nod to tradition there, that's I think a really good nod to make. Agreed.
Yeah. For me, this was, I think, the area where my first and second read-through differed the most. For me, in my first read-through, the characters felt like you said, they were just, checking boxes or filling roles. But the second time through, one thing that I really caught was the dynamics between the characters. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for instance, the Kitty and Old Man Logan dynamic really worked for me. The Storm and Nightcrawler, I liked. The Kitty and Peter, I liked. And I think that's where this book is gonna succeed or fail, right there.
I am going to be keeping a very close eye on how Storm, especially how Guggenheim writes Storm in this book, because I tentatively like her current uncertainty. Mm-hmm. It's something I was very suspicious of. She's always been a character who's very confident.
Well, sometimes.
Sometimes, but even when she's not certain she's making the right choices, she moves and functions with a certain degree of confidence.
Okay,
and
that's
with a certain
legit.
Degree of self-assuredness. And I think this is, what I hope this is setting up is a fairly Storm-centered book, even if she's not leading the team. Because that is such a major character shift for her, and it's such a major destabilization of what's been one of her primary traits, that I really want to see it delved into and developed and addressed. So there's that.
I mean, I think that's what we need more of in general for this book. That's what's going to make this book work or not just the characterization, but I want to go into what makes the characters interesting. Don't just have them think about what it means to be a mutant or what it means to be an X-Man. Think about what it means for Rachel Grey to be Rachel Grey. Think about what it means for Nightcrawler to be Nightcrawler. Like, have their own stuff happening, especially with a character like Rachel Grey, who is now, she has a new code name, she has a new outfit.
Neither of them is, I'm having a lot of trouble with both of them.
Well, I'm willing to give this book the benefit of the doubt, just simply because we haven't gone into that yet, other than Kitty said that Rachel should, try something new that was less tied to legacy. Like,
if Kitty turns out to have designed Rachel's costume, I'll accept that. I will literally believe that Kitty Pryde has designed anything that I find at least vaguely lackluster.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that costume. It's very superhero-y in a way that's surprising for Rachel.
Rachel's had a lot of trouble having a distinct identity, and especially a distinct visual and superhero identity for a very long time.
Ever since Excalibur, honestly.
Well, superheroism was something that she came into reluctantly, and even initially that was something she struggled with. Remember, she basically just she didn't have a code name, and she just wore warm-up clothes for the first long time.
She had leg warmers and suspenders.
She did. She had leg warmers. It was fantastic.
It's pretty great.
Those outfits. But yeah, that was something she had a lot of. The idea of a superhero identity has never really sat easily with her. And even when her code name was Phoenix, it was just a descriptor. It was who she was.
Right.
So, yeah, again, that's something that I want to see explored further, not just left to sit. There are a lot of good hooks in this book, and there's a lot of potential. This is a first issue that leaves me eager for the second, and it's one that leaves me interested in and warm to the series, and even if I cynically recognize all of the nostalgia strings it's pulling, they're still getting pulled pretty hard.
They really are, yeah.
So I'm going to say that my take on this book is critical but cautiously optimistic.
I think I'm on the same page, yeah. I mean, when we first heard of Blue and Gold, I was worried it was just going to be a 90s rehash, but really this draws from those nostalgia strings from kind of every era of X-Men.
Yeah, and that said, I think this is a book that it's really important to hold to a high standard because it is one of those flagship titles, and it's a book that people are going to be getting their first idea of the X-Men from, and I want it to be as good as it can be. Next up, we've got All-New Wolverine number 19, written by Tom Taylor with pencils by Leonard Kirk, inks by Corey Hampshire, and colors by Michael Garland. While All-New Wolverine is not ending and restarting with Resurrect Zion, this story does open a new arc, and so I should say, starting off, if you are looking to jump onto All-New Wolverine and you don't want to read the previous material, which you should anyway because it's great, this might be a good place to do that.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is almost like a new volume of All-New Wolverine. The last issue of the last storyline wrapped up a lot of plot hooks that had been out there for, God, years and years, really.
Also, I will say, while I miss the blue and gold, I appreciate the rationale for Laura's new costume, and I feel like the justification for it goes a long way to counterbalance the desaturation.
Agreed.
Totally. Yeah.
Speaking of costumes, and speaking in part of the justification for Laura's costume, so Gabby, Laura's young clone, has a superhero costume finally.
It's so good.
It's great. I love it.
Tom Taylor, I know you watch these. Protect Gabby at all costs. She is a treasure.
She is seriously one of my favorite new characters of like the last decade. I love her so much.
Yeah. This book. I mean, I love Laura. I've loved Laura for a long time, but I'm still just blown away every issue by how good this book is and how much it is exactly the book I want it to be.
Well, and it keeps doing new and interesting things. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say the first volume of All-New Wolverine, even though this technically still is, was like a genre hopping thing. It was
first costume. We can divide it by costumes.
There we go. The first costume era. It was seeing different sides of Laura and Gabby, exposing her to different aspects of the Marvel Universe, and that worked well. And now, I mean, she's really come into her own as a hero. She's triumphed over some of the stuff she's been dealing with for ages. And so now we're seeing, that she's the best there is at what she does, and what she does is what's in this book.
Yeah, and what she does is pretty fantastic and remarkably well balanced. The first 18 issues were sort of Laura figuring out who she was, who she wanted to be, and now we're coming into her being that. Mm-hmm. And it's so cool. It's so neat. And one of the things that I don't get tired of in this book that feels especially relevant this issue, I'm thinking of a couple specific pages, is the sense of wonder that goes with it.
Yeah, agreed.
In a lot of ways, All-New Wolverine is a book about aspiration, and it's about looking at superheroes, or at least some superheroes, as aspirational figures, not only for their powers and for what they do with them, but for the community they have and for what they represent. It's about a character who has a very, very complicated relationship to superhero symbolism and identity, and learning to own it, but seeing it as kind of foreign. And man, the current art team, every new art team I look at, I totally side eye when they come in.
Because the past ones have been so good.
Yeah, and that's something that this batch of folks is really nailing.
So Leonard Kirk, who's on pencils, he did a whole lot of X Factor back in the day, the X Factor Investigations run. He basically did the last gigantic chunk of it for multiple years, and his work was solid there. It's solid here. It's again like Ardian Syaf on X-Men Gold. It's not the most distinctive art style, but it's very effective visual storytelling, and there are little bits I really like. I'm thinking of this one page where Laura's getting shot a whole bunch, and she's Laura, and her new suit is armored, so it could be worse. But she's just got this sort of look that really works. I mean, it's a female character in a superhero book who's not just made more sexy by going through pain. She's seriously, genuinely annoyed and
that's
uncomfortable.
Something that's been consistent throughout this book so far. And I'd like to think that at this point they wouldn't hire an artist who didn't do that and who couldn't do that.
Yeah.
But speaking of costumes, I want to give Kirk major props for the new costume and how it fits and moves.
Yeah.
Because It's very hard to draw a superhero costume that looks like heavy fabric, moves like heavy fabric, interacts with a body like heavy fabric, and still looks badass and super heroic. And Kirk nails it. Does it really well here.
Yeah, I was ready to hate this costume, and suddenly I love it after its first appearance.
Yeah, it also fits over Laura's chest, especially like armor, like body, like heavy fabric, heavy body armor, which is, again, so great to see and so cool. And I really like the current era of costume design that we're in comics, and that's starting to get more consistent, at least in the X books, which are the main Cape books I read.
X-Men Blue
And
is the
I'm very happy
book with the
about it.
costumes I'm most excited about. But this is great too.
McKelvey.
As far as the plot, basic premise, it's a story where an alien kid crash lands on Earth and infects a bunch of people, and they cut off...
And whispers Laura's name before dying.
Right, and, the whole part of New York gets cut off, and then Laura has to go into it. And so the kind of stakes here, and Laura just unflinchingly diving in, I mean, you mentioned you thought it might be because she still got that sort of not self-destructive streak, exactly.
I think it's that Laura is bad at considering potential risk to herself as a factor in her decisions. She is the character who had to be talked into and was baffled at the need for bulletproof armor because she has a healing factor. And Gabby pointed out, but it sucks getting shot.
Legit.
Why would you not want to not have that happen? But and the impression I got from this is that was just something that had not occurred to Laura. So the way she dives in, that's still kind of a factor in the way she dives into danger, I think.
I don't know, because for me, part of the first part of All-New Wolverine before this issue was her discovering connections and discovering family and rediscovering family and discovering a reason to, continue existing, especially now that she has Gabby.
That doesn't mean that those patterns and habits have been completely overwritten. The fact that she consciously sees alternatives to them doesn't necessarily, or is aware of them as dysfunctional habits and patterns, doesn't mean that they're not still part of her decision-making process.
I don't know. I was just getting big damn hero vibes at the end, and I was very, very happy. But maybe I'm being overly naive here. I just thought it was really, really cool.
You're being overly naive here?
That does happen at times.
A little bit.
But this issue, goddamn, so good.
So that's 2 of 2. Miles, what's our issue of the week?
So X-Men Gold was a solid issue, but I think it's going to work a lot better in context of the series it's setting up. In terms of a full issue that stands alone and is full of amazing things we loved, I mean, God, All-New Wolverine. I almost feel bad because we've given All-New Wolverine so many issue of the weeks.
Because it's always the best issue in the weeks it comes out. Like, seriously, how is it that y'all still come into this segment, if any of you actually do, wondering what the issue of the week is going to be in a week with All-New Wolverine? It's always All-New Wolverine, and it's always earned it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's just... It does new cool stuff every single time, and this is no exception. In fact, this is newer and cooler stuff than it's done really in quite a while.
Yeah, if you want more to that, other X books, up your game. I would love a line where every title gave All-New Wolverine serious competition for Book of the Week.
Yeah.
That would be so great.
There's some really cool stuff that seems to be coming out. I'm psyched about it.
True that.
What about our panel of the week?
Well, our panel of the week is also from All-New Wolverine, and it's not actually a panel.
We're cheating again.
We're not cheating. It's our show.
Haha, power.
We make the rules. It's like Calvin Ball. But no, our panel of the week is actually the corner square from All-New Wolverine number 19.
Or like corner, like triangle
corner
thing.
Corner. So Marvel has brought back not exactly corner squares. They used to have these in the top left corner of every cover was a picture of the team or of a couple flagship characters. And the X line has this great consistent branding that creates these 2 diagonal triangular spaces at the upper left and bottom right. The bottom right has the creative information. The upper left has
the X.
The X. And X-Men Gold is pretty solid, but All-New Wolverines is terrific, and it interacts with the design really well. It's just really well put together. It makes me want to read the book even more than I already wanted to read the book. And I think it's a really good example of tradition updated in a way that works well.
Yeah, and actually along those lines, like the branding and the design of the new X books.
Yeah, I'm really solidly impressed with that. Whoever did the book design for these guys, major props.
That's it for this week. Thanks for watching.
If you like what you've seen here, but think it would be way better without our amazing faces, check out our podcast, Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. New episodes go up every Sunday at explainthexmen.com, also on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Miles, what have we got for them this week?
This week, speaking of resurrection, we are talking to one of its architects. We're talking to
Miles, I don't know what
Resurrection.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're talking to Sina Grace, who's going to write the new Iceman Ongoing. We have an interview with him, and I had a really good time talking with him.
Yeah, and I think I feel really good about what we talked about. We've been wanting to do this since he got announced as writer. But for those of you unfamiliar, the upcoming Resurrection Iceman series is about adult Iceman. Mm-hmm. And we are really, really excited for it and really excited to see Sina on it. It's a book that means a lot to us for a lot of reasons. And
Very much.
An interview that I suspect you will enjoy as much as we did.
Yeah, really fun one.
That podcast, these video reviews, and everything else at explainthexmen.com are brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. Those rad folks are the ones who keep us on the air and ad-free. We are an entirely listener-supported project. And if you want to join the ranks of folks supporting what we do, you can do that at the link either above or below this video, depending on where you're watching it.
In the meantime, we will see you next week for a new story arc in Old Man Logan, and I believe the launches of X-Men Blue and Weapon X as Resurrection continues. Scion.
Sorry about was that weird? I hope it wasn't weird.
I mean, it was unexpected. It was fine.
It wasn't like a reference or anything. I realized like halfway through and then I'd already committed.
Wait, referenced the Angel and
the
Laura thing?
Because we were talking about All-New Wolverine.
Okay, I'll take it. That's fine. That actually makes it way better.
No.
Oh, well then I won't
Sorry.
take it. Can we just pretend it was a reference? Would have been a good reference.
It's good to be precise about these kinds of things.